So, in this episode, I talked to Sara Johnson. She is the owner and founder of LeadLab Media. And we talk about a pretty unique topic in that we've never talked about on this podcast before, but it's one that's near and dear to my heart as a father of three. Sara is about to go on maternity leave, and she is the owner, founder, and CEO of her agency. She has 12 people that are working for her, and she is like, hey, I play a vital role in the agency. How do I take 2 to 3 months off, fully recuperate from labor, which is real, and then keep the agency going while I'm out? And so Sara and I really broke down what are the different things that are going on. And in the pre-conversation leading up to recording this episode, she and I really figured out that her fulfillment was on point. Like, the creative services were crushing it, account management had it on lock. The one area, and this is true for so many agency owners in particular, that she's still holding is sales. So we talk about how can she get sales off her plate in the next couple months while she's transitioning towards being on maternity leave, and how is that different from what she does now. If you're a person that is selling very customized agency solutions and big ideas with complicated proposals, this is actually for you. If you're tired of not being able to take time off or being able to handle off sales to someone else, it's probably because your sales process is still very, very complicated. Sara and I go through this together and we figure out a solution that works for her. So let's get into it. All right. So Sara, I'm so excited for you to join us on the podcast today. We're talking a little bit beforehand about the issue that you're going through and, kind of what's coming up for your agency. And it's one that we haven't gotten before, but it's so funny, Sara, because it's one that I certainly can identify with, and it's something that we've had to accommodate for in our companies as well, keep people being out for an extended period of time. So why don't you tell the listeners what the presenting issue is that we're going to be talking about today?
Yeah, the presenting issue is that I'm the owner founder of LeadLab Media. And we've, been around for 8 years and, have a company of 12 employees, rocking and rolling. But I'm about to go on maternity leave with my second baby. So I have to prepare being out for an extended period of time and make sure that everything's in order and all my ducks are in order and the team's in order before I leave. And I've got 2 months to do it.
Yeah, and one of the big things, I mean, you talked about, hey, like, fulfillment for clients is on point and client services is on point. The big kind of gap that you have remaining in your agency, and this is totally normal for where you're at size-wise, is who's going to take over the sales portion so that you can be out for several months and do all the normal parenting mom things that you need to do, and still have the business grow while you're out. So
Right.
I'd love to ask some questions about kind of what your process is right now from lead generation through close of sale. Is that okay?
Sure, absolutely.
So how many meetings or leads are you guys generating every month, just on average? And how does that work?
Yeah. So the reason that this is a challenge is because of just everything that's gone on for the last few years. The Great Resignation was just like a period of boom for us
Yeah.
where we were overwhelmed with business. People were asking for our help because everyone who does this work, because we do paid media, so we do, Google ads, Facebook ads, banner ads, we're in platform, we're optimizing, we're reporting, we're like kind of, in the weeds doing the work. All those people quit in, 2020. And so we were just completely overwhelmed with work, like, hey, so and so's gone. Can you guys jump in? Yeah, we sure can. So we didn't have, like, our sales process went cold from 2019, only because we were just so inundated with work from just referrals alone. So then, we've lived on that and grew our team and had to expand because we had, we were overwhelming our staff during that time and hired a bunch of people. And then the recession. And so then it all kind of swung back the other direction where, people were pausing budgets and they, were on hold for things and, they were restaffing those positions, so then it changed. So then that referral pipeline just stopped. So we've had to kind of figure out what is the new normal. What is a referral pipeline look like? How do we even get it started? So we've tested a lot of different things. We've tested email campaigns that have done well. We've tested LinkedIn campaigns that have done well. I think the process, it depends on, what we have on and how expensive that is. We could get up to 10, 15 calls a week. But it's pricey to get that.
Right.
You're working with lead gen companies who, have lists and things like that. And then from there, I was taking all of the calls. I was doing all the discovery calls. I was closing all of those calls. I was the only one in that process. So it was pretty much my full day just managing that. And so that's why with me leaving, we have to figure out like, what does that process now look like?
I love it. This is such a beautiful opportunity for your agency to evolve by
Yeah.
necessity, and it's going to make your life so much better after you have a salesperson in place that can take care of this for you. It's just gonna. I'm speaking from my own experiences, by the way. Like it changes the game. Your whole life just gets
Your
better.
lips to God's ears.
So here's a question for you. Do you record any of your sales calls right now, Sara?
I don't, only because it's not under NDA and I just don't want a problem with that. So I kind of say, this isn't a kickoff, this is just a conversation. I certainly could. I just don't, I've always wanted to avoid the conversation of, well, I can't tell you that because we're being recorded and we're not under NDA, whatever. But maybe that won't happen. So I could try it.
Well, I think that one of the things that you can do is you can record it onto your device and keep it for yourself. You're not going to share this with anybody else,
For sure. I know that, but does the
sure.
person being recorded know that?
Well, I think you could say it up front. I mean, we got into a habit of just recording every sales call that we ever take, and if someone has an issue with it, we turn it off. If they just say, "Hey, I don't feel comfortable being recorded," fine, we turn it off. Most people
Okay.
don't say anything. They don't care at all. There's like, oh, cool. And if they ask, like, hey, well, why are you recording it? Well, listen, we use this for training purposes, and it helps me go back and remember some of the things we talked about. And so it could be a really helpful thing for you to have. There's a software that we've used, and now I'm not going to remember the name of it because I don't have it set up on my Zoom anymore because I don't take very many sales calls anymore, Sara. But there's a software out there that, and I'll look for it and put it in the show notes, but essentially it's like $50 a month. We put it on all of our sales staff's Zoom accounts. And what it does is it actually records the Zoom, it transcribes it, and this is what's really cool. It's better than Gong in this sense, where Gong would like highlight specific action items or something. It actually says like, hey, this person leaned forward. They were interested in this piece of the conversation, or they sat back and they were disinterested, or they were looking off to the side, they weren't paying attention, and then they came back. And so it actually gives you markers for, oh, I said this thing, and then they responded physically in the video call, and it's really helpful feedback. I will find that and send it to you after this. But yeah,
That's super cool. Yeah,
yeah.
thank you.
So one of the things that I did at first was I started to map out what I call, instead of a sales script, because I don't think that those are really helpful, especially for agency sales, because you could go all over the map. I like to create what I call our sales roadmaps, right? So you think about a road trip. There are, we were just talking about us going to different weddings this past weekend. There are a lot of different ways to get to a destination, typically in the US, right? So like, just thinking about even driving a car, you could take the scenic route and say like, hey, I want to go this way up and around and come through. I want to see friends in Vegas, and then I want to get to Portland, whatever you're doing, right? And I think that that's the same idea with the sales roadmap. Ultimately, we're trying to get to a destination where we say, hey, what's the next step from this call? Whether that's, hey, you're not a good qualified client, or you are very qualified, so here's the next step. We're all trying to get to that spot. So I wonder, Sara, have you ever written down some of the things that you do just to walk someone through a sales conversation?
I have,
Okay.
but what I've written down is my well-honed roadmap
Right.
that is very rooted in my story of starting the company and why we exist. And what we found is that's difficult to transition to someone else that isn't me, because it's like, well, this is what I would say to this question, and this is how I answer this question.
Right.
And we have all of that mapped out, but we found that, okay, but what is like the LeadLab answer? Like, what is it if somebody else was saying
Yeah.
this, what would be the answer? So we're in that transition, but I personally, to be honest, since it's so natural, I
Yeah.
I can't even tell you why it works. It just works. And so then transitioning that to someone else that isn't me has been a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, and it's the good news is you're not alone in that. And there is something unique about what you can get away with as the owner founder of the agency that a salesperson could not do. And I remember experiencing that at different agencies where I was like, guys, why aren't you saying this? And they're like, we've tried that. We just can't say it like you would say it. You have a different demeanor, different cadence. There's a different amount of authority. Like I can show up in a quarter zip athletic gear and no one bats an eye. I've got long hair. No one cares. They're like, I just need you to get me results, Dave. Just help me. And so I'm sure that it's similar for you too, Sara. And one of the things that we started to look at was really going, okay, when we take someone through a sales roadmap, we do 90% for all of our agencies, 90% of our deals are one call closes. So literally within a 30-minute call, we're walking someone through the process and we will then go back and forth on email perhaps, but it's only one call and our close time is usually about 2 weeks.
Right.
Now, part of the reason why we've been able to do that is we gave very specific parameters to our sales teams about, hey, here's what it costs to actually deliver on this service. You only have 1 or 2 services to sell anyways. So like you can kind of figure out where someone's going to fit in that. But then the other thing that we would do is we'd say, listen, here are the packages. This is what package 1, 2, and 3 looks like for service A. And so then they just know, hey, this is what it costs. And then what we're able to do is we use Proposify for all of our agreements. We just have templates in there. So they fill in the information, send it out. It takes them less than 5 minutes to get a proposal out. And when that's happening at speed and they're having 8 calls a day per sales member, it's a necessity to have that sort of efficiency. So I guess one of my questions there is, how simple have you made LeadLab services, or is it a la carte, choose your own adventure? I've checked out some of your pricing and stuff, but I'd love for you to describe it to the audience.
Yeah, so one of the things that makes us unique is we're extremely flexible. So it's hourly model, no minimums, no commitments. So it allows us to really right size our services to the person that we're talking to and the needs and where they're at. So, we could be talking to a big brand that needs a ton of hours to execute lots of campaigns. We can handle that. Or it could be a very small startup that has this maybe needs some training, which we have a training program as well, and maybe some guidance along the way. And that's just a few hours a month. We can do that too. So there is an element of needing to understand, where is that person at? What are the needs? What is their budget? What can they afford? And how can we, right size our services? Maybe even it's just consulting to fit within their budget. So there is some kind of nuance in terms of just figuring out what's needed. But then once we figure out the scope, then it's, we only do what's approved. And then that's kind of a simple formula once it's approved.
Cool. By the way, I think I have a good lead for you on a salesperson if you're looking to hire someone. So yes. We'll talk about that afterwards.
So that was my other question, is what level of experience do you think this person needs to be? Because another challenge that we ran into is we had someone junior who, had the time, want to take the discovery calls, but, I didn't realize how much I was drawing on my 20 years of experience when questions came up, or when, there was a discussion about should we do this or that, and it kind of became like more consultative selling. So it made me rethink, do we need somebody who's been in this industry for a while to be able to answer these questions?
I think that you're going to want to find somebody that's been doing agency sales for at least a couple years. And if you're
Mhm.
looking for consultative sellers, the person that I have in mind is a consultative selling person, and they have experience working with agencies and even owned their own agency for a little while when they were in their early 20s. I do think that you're going to need to find someone that you're going to have you ever hired a salesperson before? I guess that's one of the
No.
questions. Okay. All right.
Yeah,
So
no.
this is going to be great. So
You're
here's,
looking at the salesperson.
yeah, I get it. I get it. I love it. Okay. So one of the things that I would do, Sara, like there've been a lot of studies that have shown that if you do a commission only based salesperson, they don't perform that well, which is so counterintuitive, but they need some sort of base that they can rely on. So what I love to do is I say, look, your base is 70 grand. Let's say, like I'm just throwing out a random, your base is 70, and all that I need you to do to get over your base is sell at least 3x of that in a year. And then anything after that, we're going to give you a commission on 10%, 15% of the project, maybe. You can figure that out based off your margins and what you think is best. But basically, I give them the incentive of like, it's pretty clear that you have to 3x whatever you're paying your salesperson just to pay for them. So that's why I just give them like, hey man, this is the deal. Here's where you're at. Here's where we need you to be at. Here's where I actually want you to be at to hit your goals. So I always bring people in. I'm like, how much money do you want to make? You know, and if they say 300 grand, sweet. I love that. That'd be amazing. Let's get you there. So in order to hit that, here's the number you'd have to hit to be able to get to 300 grand. Here's how we reverse engineer that for leads. And I would make this person an integral piece in generating their own meetings. You know, that is a different skill set. It really, really is. I know that you know that. But that may be a thing that you need to set up that would make it more cost effective. Or you just say, listen, we're going to get you a seamless.ai account. You go pull 1,000 people a day for like $250 a month or whatever it is right now. I don't know what it is right now. But it was pretty inexpensive for a long time. And you prospect at your own pace, fill up your calendar. And then really our goal is to, you know, get you to that number. So, you know, based off what my close rate is Sara, we're going to just say that you're going to do 80% of what I do. That seems to be the right number, by the way, in my experience, not always. And here's how many you'd need to get to be able to do that. So I think that you need somebody that has some experience in this space for sure.
Okay, good to know. It's great insight. Thank you.
And I think that, you know, one of the things that I'd look for, Sara, is like a self-starter that's going to come in and sit on calls with you. Like someone that can just come in for the next however long you have until baby comes, that you can just be like, hey, sit with me on all these calls, let's go through it. And basically what I always tried to do when we brought a new salesperson in, I'd have them for the first week, all they did was sit there and listen, take notes, watch, observe. And a lot of times the way I'd set that up when we had a prospect on the calls, I'd just say, hey, listen, so-and-so is joining us. They're in training. They're here. They're just observing. And so I just like dispel the awkwardness from the beginning, and prospects never have an issue. And then the next week, what I say is, okay, it's week 2. I will lead the calls, but I want you to chime in. And if they start getting it after a couple days, you've had 4, 5, 6 meetings the first 2 days of the week, and you're like, okay, I'm going to be here as your backup. Now you're leading it. And you just kind of give them a little bit at a time. And then what I do is I say, okay, next week, week 3, you're going to lead all the calls. I'm going to be silent unless something starts to go awry. And so you're still there. You can still step in, have a conversation, add a little anecdote. That's what I always did. I'd be like, oh, by the way, here's this case study. Here's this thing. And I'd see the salesperson like take a note, you know, like, oh, that was good. Like Dave said something fun. But that's a good tangible way for you to really look at going like, okay, in 3 weeks, you could be out of sales. And then what you can do, trust but verify, like, hey, I just want to see recordings from this client and that client from your sales calls this week. And so again, you're starting to continuing to build that trust and verification with whoever the salesperson is. And yet you're still doing the other things you need to do to get ready for your leave. And that's already taken off your plate. And I really do think if you find the right hire, 3 weeks is not crazy.
Okay, excellent. Well, that's great advice. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Well, Sara, if people want to engage with Lead Labs and learn more about what you guys do, where can they go to find that?
Yeah, so check us out on LeadLab Media or LeadLab Academy. LeadLab Academy is our training site. We've got some training modules for anyone who wants to learn how to do this, or LeadLab Media if you want any help with your paid media analytics or performance marketing. We come to us, like I said, we're completely flexible hourly model, so we can help pretty much anyone. Or check me out on LinkedIn, Sara Burton Johnson on LinkedIn, where we have posts about some articles and just kind of things that are happening and, best practices, things like that I'll post from time to time.
I love it. Well, thanks so much for joining us on the show today, Sara.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. I appreciate the opportunity.